The raven flew across the snow-capped trees of the far north, its wings slicing the air like a shadow of fate. Below, Winterfell lay silent under a heavy blanket of snow, its towers lit by soft candlelight. But in this version of events, Bran, Stark, the boy who fell and rose as the three-eyed raven, had never seen the Night King. A vision that once linked him to the icy harbinger of death never came. The consequences of this single alteration would ripple through Westeros like a stone cast into still water without that crucial sighting. Bran did not know the Night King had marked him, nor did he understand the urgency with which the White Walkers approached the realms of men. The connection remained dormant, unexplored, hidden in the fog of visions that never reached their conclusion. The warnings remained vague, his transformation incomplete, his purpose uncertain. He still trained under the three-eyed raven, still watched the past, but the future was clouded and incomplete. Meanwhile, the wall stood tall, but unwatched. The magic within it, ancient and fading, continued to hold, but barely. Without Bran's mark, the protective spells remained intact. The Night King bided his time, amassing his army beyond the reach of ravens and men. He waited for an opportunity, a crack in the order of things, and it came, not through Bran, but through a different path altogether far to the south. Jon Snow was proclaimed king in the north. His focus remained on uniting the northern houses, dealing with Sansa's skepticism, and sending scouts to the wall. He had heard rumors, disjointed tales of undead things and blue-eyed wights, but with no direct witness like Bran to confirm them. They were merely legends retold around hearths. The urgency to form alliances against the dead never fully ignited. His pleas to Daenerys, when they came, were less convincing, lacking Bran's testimony, lacking the certainty he once carried. Arya returned to Winterfell, her blade sharp and her eyes wary. She questioned Bran's mutterings, his vague riddles, and his long silences. Sansa grew increasingly distrustful of her brother, sensing in him not a seer, but a boy lost in time, unable to offer them answers when they most needed them. The North grew restless. Petyr Baelish, always watching, seized the chance to fan the embers of doubt. As winter deepened, the White Walkers made their move. They approached Eastwatch by the sea under cover of the longest night, still unmarked. Bran did not warn anyone of the breach, and the raven carrying the news came too late. By the time Jon sent riders, Eastwatch was a ruin, its defenders slaughtered, its breach spreading frost and fear into the lands beyond. The Night King had no dragon this time, because Bran's absence from that key moment meant the chain of events leading to Viserion's death had not occurred. Without Bran's urgings, Jon had never led a suicide mission beyond the wall to capture a white. Thus, no Viserion died, no wall was blasted with blue fire. But the Night King didn't need a dragon. He found a different path, more treacherous, more cunning. Bran, still in Winterfell, spent hours in silence, eyes rolled back as he walked through visions of the past. He saw the Mad King's whispers, the doom of Valyria, the fall of Summerhall. But the future, once bright with threads of purpose, was close to him. His greatest strength had become a labyrinth with no center dot, and so it was that the Night King came not with spectacle, but with shadow. He skirted the wall's magic, seeking mountain passes and forgotten paths long buried in snow. Villages vanished. In the night, their people turned to silent soldiers. Still, the South knew nothing. Still, the North argued. The first real warning came when House Umber sent no word. Jon rode to Last Hearth himself, and found the castle quiet, the hearths cold, and the lordling Ned Umber nailed to a wall in a spiral of limbs. It was a message. But still, Jon did not know what it meant. No one did except, perhaps, Bran, who stared at the flames that night and whispered, "He's closer than we think." By then, it was nearly too late. Snow fell in thick, whispering sheets as John rode back from Last Hearth, his thoughts heavy and clouded. The gruesome spiral left by the Night King gnawed at his thoughts. He remembered the shape. It mirrored the ancient symbols carved in the caves at Dragonstone, the same spirals the children of the forest had drawn before they created the White Walkers. But without Bran to explain the meaning or confirm their origins, the symbol remained a mystery. Sam Tarly pored over old scrolls at the Citadel, finding fragments, but nothing definitive. In Winterfell, tensions simmered. Sansa sat at the head of the hall, commanding loyalty from northern lords wary of Jon's long absences. Arya watched Littlefinger from the shadows. Bran drifted further from them all, present but unreachable. He spoke rarely, and when he did, his words were laced with riddles. "There's a storm coming," he whispered once to Arya, "but no one can see it because they're staring at the wrong sky." Arya pressed him, but he simply looked past her. His sight, once so sharp, was clouded by the absence of the night. King's presence in his mind. Without that connection, he couldn't track the army of the dead, couldn't know their path or their plans. The most vital chess piece on the board had gone blind to the one threat that mattered most. Jon sent ravens south again, this time with more urgency. He wrote to Daenerys and Tyrion at Dragonstone, describing the signs, the spiral, and the silence of the North. But without a White to show, without Bran's testimony, the letters seemed like the ravings of a man clinging to old myths. Daenerys remained focused on Cersei. The Iron Throne still beckoned. Her advisors urged caution. Tyrion, ever logical, doubted the scale of the threat. Only Sir Davos believed wholeheartedly, but his voice was small in the din of politics and ambition. At the Wall, the remaining Night's Watch regrouped at Castle Black. The Lord Commander, a weary man named Cotter Pike, sent scouts into the north. None returned. The Rangers vanished without trace, and Pike, realizing too late what approached, sent one final raven. By the time it reached Winterfell, Castle Black was gone. No fire, no siege, only snow and silence. Sam now returned to Winterfell with Gilly and the baby, brought books that hinted at the truth. "They don't need to break the wall to get through," he told Jon. "There are old tunnels, abandoned, maybe collapsed in parts, but magic only guards the wall, not the forgotten paths beneath it." Jon clenched his jaw, realizing their mistake. They had been guarding the gates, never the ground beneath their feet. Bran sat motionless for days, slipping in and out of visions. But he could no longer see clearly. The Night King moved outside his reach, like a shadow that refused to be lit. And worse, Bran felt something in emptiness, a silence where once there had been a pulse of icy dread. It was not that the Night King was gone. It was that he had learned to hide. One evening, as the fires dimmed in Winterfell's great hall, Bran spoke clearly for the first time in days. "He is hunting me," he said softly. "Even if I've never seen him, he knows I'm here." Arya and Sansa exchanged glances. "Then we must get you away," Sansa said, rising. "You are too important to lose." But Bran shook his head. "He won't stop. Even if I don't see him, he sees me." That night, the wind howled louder. Ghosts growled in the courtyard. The direwolves felt it before anyone else. Something old and cold stirred beyond the trees. In the dead of night, the godswood of Winterfell stood frozen, its weirwood tree blanketed in hoarfrost, its red leaves still clinging to icy branches. Bran sat beneath it, eyes glazed, reaching again into the river of time. But no vision came only. Echoes, fragments, voices from centuries past. The present, it seemed, was closing in like a shroud, dark and impenetrable. Arya stood at the tree line, her breath misting in the frigid air. She had come to protect him, though she wouldn't say it aloud. Something about Bran's stillness disturbed her more than his strange words ever could. "He's close, isn't he?" she asked, and though Bran didn't respond, she saw a faint nod. That same night, Jon returned to Winterfell under torchlight, weary and battle-hardened from his ride across the north. He found the castle uneasy. Sansa filled him in. Another wildling outpost had gone dark, and the crypts had grown colder, though no fire had been extinguished. Bran's words troubled her deeply. "He's never been wrong," she said, "even when we don't understand what he means." Jon stepped into the great hall and saw Bran staring at nothing. "You said he's hunting you," Jon pressed. "But how do you know?" Bran's voice came, distant and fragile. "Because when I reach into the past, it is no longer untouched. He is there now, walking through it like it's his own." Jon looked to Sam for answers. Sam shook his head, uncharacteristically at a loss. If the Night King can influence time, if he can shadow the past itself, then he's not just coming for the living. He's unraveling memory. That's why Bran is weakening. He's cutting him off at the root. Elsewhere, Daenerys had finally grown uneasy. Jon's second letter had arrived, desperate, urgent, less diplomatic. It bore the seal of House Stark, but the words were pure Jon. "The dead are moving, the wall is breached. Winterfell will fall next. I beg you come north, with dragons, with Unsullied, with fire." She showed it to Tyrion, who read it twice, then once more in silence. "If he's wrong," Tyrion said, "he forfeits the war in the south." But Daenerys looked toward the sea. "And if he's right, there won't be a south." Still, the journey would take weeks. Even dragons could not cross snowstorms unseen. And in that time, the Night King moved at Winterfell. Preparations began. Sansa ordered the gates reinforced, the walls salted, and every blade sharpened. Gendry, newly arrived from the south with messages from the Brotherhood, took charge of the forges. "Dragonglass or not, everything burns with enough fire," he muttered. Arya trained recruits in the yard, young boys and old men alike. She gave them blades and hard truths in equal measure. Don't aim for the body. Aim for the neck, or the back of the skull, or you'll be one of them. Tormund and Beric arrived from the ruins of Eastwatch, barely alive, their numbers broken. "They didn't storm the wall," Tormund rasped. "They slipped through, like smoke, no warning." Beric's flaming sword had been extinguished twice already. "There's something wrong with the fire," he said. "It's like it doesn't want to burn for us anymore." On the third day, scouts saw the first sign of what was coming. Not an army, not a horde, but a mist, crawling across the fields, freezing trees in seconds. Shapes moved within it. Shapes with eyes that glowed faintly blue, like coals buried under snow. Jon stood atop the battlements and stared at the oncoming fog. "He's testing us," he murmured, "measuring the walls, the strength of our fear." That night, Bran whispered again, but only to Arya. "He doesn't just want me now," he said. "He wants everything I've ever seen. He wants to erase it all." Arya's voice was steady. "Then we won't let him." Bran blinked, and for the first time in days, he looked straight at her. "You might have to kill me," he said. Arya didn't flinch. The sun did not rise the next morning. Instead, a cold gray haze settled over Winterfell, and in its stillness was a silence that stretched unnaturally long. No crows cawed, no wind rustled the banners. It was as if the land itself held its breath. Jon stood in the courtyard, sword at his hip, eyes cast toward the north. Beside him, Ghost paced restlessly, growling low, ears twitching at sounds Jon couldn't hear. In the war room, Sansa examined the map of the north, pinning markers where villages had gone dark. The dead were not charging like men. They were surrounding, creeping, isolating. "He's cutting off the limbs," she said grimly. Winterfell is the heart. He'll take everything else first. Bran remained in the Godswood, surrounded by guards, but unmoving. Arya hadn't left his side since their conversation. She sat perched in a branch above him, like a shadow waiting to strike. She had always trusted her instincts, and something told her that if the Night King came, he would come quietly. Tormund and Beric helped prepare the outer perimeter. Fires were lit, dragonglass-tipped spears handed out, trenches dug. Gendry worked without rest in the forge, his face blackened with soot, his hammer shaping weapons as fast as hands could carry them away. "If we survive this," he muttered, "I'm building boats, just boats. Never want to see another axe." Sam stayed close to Jon, offering what knowledge he could. "I think Bran is more than a target," he explained. "He's a door. If the Night King takes him, maybe he can unmake the past, change the story, change everything." Jon's eyes were sharp. "That means he can't fall." Sam hesitated. "Or he can't be allowed to exist when the Night King comes." Jon flinched. "You're not saying—" "I'm saying we might have to choose between Bran and the world." But Jon couldn't think about that now. He rode along the battlements, gave orders, checked supplies. His thoughts strayed to Daenerys. Whether she would come in time, he didn't know. He only knew Winterfell had to hold until she did. Or until the end. As night fell, the mist returned. This time it reached the outer fields, and with it came silence again. The watchmen on the towers strained their eyes. Shapes moved in the white veil slow at first, like drifting figures caught in a dream. Then faster, closer. The horns blew once, twice, 3 times. "They're here." Someone shouted "Dot," and they were. The first wave came with terrifying speed, ghoulish shadows breaking from the mist, climbing the walls, clawing at the gates. Their eyes burned blue, but their bodies were twisted mockeries of what they had been. Men, women, children, the fallen from the last hearth, from Eastwatch, even wildlings Jon once knew by name. Jon led the charge on the ramparts, Lone Claw cutting through the dead like light through darkness. Tormund bellowed beside him, his axe humming with every swing. Arrows rained from above, and fires burst in the trenches, but the mist dulled the flames. Beric fought with a dim, flickering sword, its flame resisting the cold, but only barely Dot. The Godswood. Bran opened his eyes. "He's here," he whispered. Arya sprang from her branch, blades in both hands, scanning the trees. Shadows moved in the fog, but no attack came. The Night King did not strike like a warrior. He waited. He hunted Dot, and then it happened. A section of the southern wall nowhere near the front collapsed with a thunderous crack. The mist had circled them. The dead poured in like a river breaking its dam. Screams echoed through the keep. The courtyard became chaos. The Night King had never planned to breach the front. He'd made them watch the north while he slipped through the south. Jon turned too late. The walls were overrun. The dead were inside Winterfell in the Godswood. Bran whispered again. "He wants to touch the roots of the tree. That's how he'll end it all." Arya looked at him, heart pounding. "Then I'll cut his hand off before he does." And she ran into the snow. The storm inside Winterfell was made of bone and ice and shrieks. The courtyard, once a training ground and market for the North's last stronghold, had become a battlefield cloaked in the white mist of death. The dead moved in packs, climbing walls, clawing through doors, flooding corridors with the silent precision of a mind, guiding them calculated, patient, cruel. Jon fought near the great hall, covered in blood and frost. Lone Claw bit into skulls, parried frozen limbs, severed twisted spines. But it wasn't enough. The dead didn't tire. And they didn't break. Ghost lunged beside him. jaws tearing through undead flesh, but even the direwolf was slowing. Jon looked up toward the godswood. "He's after Bran," he shouted. "Fall back. Protect the tree." Some heard him. Most didn't. The fighting was everywhere now. Fires flickered and died in pockets where the mist grew thickest. Gendry was pulled from the forge by a group of the dead, barely escaping through the side gate with a scorched spear in hand. Tormund dragged a bleeding Beric out of a pile of corpses, cursing as he slammed the gate behind them in the godswood. Arya moved like smoke, blades flashing in the pale moonlight. She dispatched the first 2 wights without a sound. The third almost caught her throat until a dragonglass dagger in her boot found its way into his chin. She crouched low, heart hammering. The fog moved strangely now, drawing toward the harp tree. She could feel him. Not the wights, not the undead. Him, the presence that chilled the marrow. Bran remained still beneath the weirwood, his hands in his lap, his eyes pale and glassy. He whispered something Arya couldn't hear. She looked at him. "You have to wake up," she hissed. "He's coming." "I'm not hiding anymore," Bran said softly. "If he wants me, he has to take me from the world." Arya frowned. "That's what I'm trying to stop." "No," Bran said, almost kindly. "That's what I'm trying to end." The branches of the weirwood groaned, as though heavy with wind, but there was no wind. The mist parted, slowly, reverently, and the Night King stepped into the grove. He was taller than Arya remembered. Not just in height, but in presence, his stillness more terrifying than any charge. He walked slowly, without threat or haste, toward Bran. Arya stepped between them. The Night King stopped. For a long moment, there was no movement, no sound. His icy eyes met hers. He tilted his head slightly, not confused, not surprised. Curious, as though acknowledging a creature of death, like himself. Then he raised one hand. The roots beneath the ground rumbled. Dozens of corpses burst through the snow, groaning as they clawed free. Old kings of winter, fallen Starks. The very dead Bran had once watched. The crypts had risen. Arya leapt into the air before the first one reached her. Her blade aimed for the Night King's throat, but he was gone in the blink of an eye. He vanished and reappeared at Bran's side. Jon burst into the grove just as Arya was knocked from the air by an undead giant. He sliced through the creature's knee and dragged her free. The Night King stood over Bran. "Don't move." Jon shouted but the Night King didn't even look at him. He raised one hand, not to attack, but to touch Bran's brow. Bran looked up at him and said just one word, "Now." At that instant, the fire in the outer courtyard erupted with a roar. Drogon screamed in the sky. A massive shadow dove through the clouds, wings stretching across the heavens. Daenerys had arrived. Flames tore across the walls, lighting the battlefield in gold. The Night King turned his head slightly, not in fear, but in amusement. He stepped back from Bran and vanished again into mist. Arya gasped. He didn't try to kill him. Jon helped her to her feet. "He wasn't here for Bran," he said slowly. Bran's eyes cleared. "He was here to mark the tree." Jon paled. "The tree?" Bran nodded. "He used me to find it. The roots are the memory of the world. If he corrupts them, he ends more than life." "He ends history," Sam said, entering the grove pale as snow. "No memory, no truth, nothing." Drogon roared again, lighting the skies above Winterfell. But far in the distance, near the edge of the godswood, the mist was moving again, this time heading south. The Night King was not finished. The flames that roared in the sky could not reach the depths the Night King sought. Even as Drogon scorched the fields outside Winterfell, even as unsullied ranks poured into the keep to drive back the dead, The ancient corruption had already begun. Where the Night King's fingers had brushed the base of the weirwood tree, the bark blackened, veins of blue frost threading through its trunk like poison in a river. Bran watched it in silence, his face pale, his expression unreadable. "He wasn't here to kill me," he said again, as if reminding himself. "He was here to infect the roots, to change the story. Not just to end it, but to rewrite it." Jon clenched his fists. "So what now? He's moving south." Bran nodded slowly. "Not to conquer, to reach the Isle of Faces." Sam drew in a breath, almost stumbling. "The Isle. It's where the weirwoods are oldest, where the green men kept the ancient lore. If he reaches it, if he touches those trees, he becomes the only memory," Bran said flatly. "Nothing else will matter." Daenerys landed Drogon just outside the Godswood, leaping from the saddle with ash in her hair and blood on her gloves. Her face was hardened, but she looked toward Jon first. "We came as fast as we could. The storm slowed us." "You're just in time to watch the world end," Arya muttered, wiping blood from her cheek. Daenerys looked at Bran. "Where is he now?" "He'll cross the neck by nightfall," Bran said. "He'll avoid armies. He's learned to hide his presence. He's not attacking anymore, he's ceding." Sansa arrived then, exhausted, her cloak torn, her hands smeared with smoke. "We won the fight," she said. "But the castle's broken. Half the dead just stopped moving. The other half fled north." She looked around at the silence. "In the grove. Why do you all look like we lost?" "Because we did," Jon wanted to say. Instead, he turned to Daenerys. "We ride south. We fly. Whatever it takes, we intercept him." But Bran shook his head. "He's already there. Or close. You'll never reach the Isle of Faces before him. Not by land." Dany looked at him sharply. "Then we fly." "No," Bran said. "You need to take me there." Sam stepped forward. "That's madness. If he catches you, I'm the only one who can seal what he's opened," Bran said, his voice stronger now. "He's infected. The memory of the world. I have to root it out before it spreads." Arya looked at Jon. "We should all go." Jon hesitated. "If we leave Winterfell undefended, it's not about the walls anymore," Bran interrupted. "If we fail at the Isle, it won't matter who holds what castle. All of Westeros will forget who they are, who they were. And he'll become the story." The weight of that silence hung heavier than any snow. Daenerys looked up at Drogon. "Then, we go now." Bran was loaded onto a makeshift saddle, his body wrapped in furs, his eyes blank as he slipped into the wind. Arya climbed behind him, blades ready. Jon and Daenerys followed on Drogon's back, while a handful of Unsullied and Northmen began riding overland toward the Trident. That night, they flew over scorched woods and dark rivers, following the trail of frost that had begun to stretch through the land like veins beneath pale skin. Villages stood silent below them, not ruined, just forgotten. Empty houses, abandoned carts, but no bodies. "They're losing memory," Bran whispered in the wind. "He's begun the unraveling." By the next morning, they reached the edge of the Green Fork. The Isle of Faces lay in the middle of the lake, quiet and eternal, its trees untouched since the age of heroes. But the mist was already there, and within it, a figure stood under the ancient canopy. Waiting. The Isle of Faces had always been a place whispered about in old stories, where the first pact between men and the children of the forest was sworn, where the weirwoods grew in silence and watched the passing of empires. Now it waited again. Its roots threatened by something older than men, colder than death. Mist hugged the water's surface as dragons circled the isle. From above, the trees looked like white sentinels, their red leaves trembling not from wind, but from something deeper fear, as if even the old gods felt what was coming. Jon leapt down first, his boots splashing into the soft mud of the shore. Arya followed, her eyes already scanning the tree line. Daenerys helped lower Bran, who sat quietly, fingers twitching as if touching invisible threads. "He's here," Bran said, "and I can't hide anymore." Dragon roared above them, but there was no response, not from the skies, not from the shadows. Jon, Arya, and Daenerys advanced into the forest, flanked by roots thicker than castle walls, some carved with symbols long forgotten. The weirwoods stood solemn and still, their carved faces watching the intruders with bleeding eyes. Bran sat beneath the oldest tree, his voice barely audible. "I'm going to try and draw him out. He wants me. He wants this place. If I open myself, he'll come." "No," Jon said, drawing Longclaw. "He will come, but he'll find us waiting." Arya disappeared into the trees, her steps silent. Daenerys remained close to Bran, eyes sharp. "When he comes," she said, "we burn him." But Bran's voice cracked. "If you kill the body and leave the mark in the roots, the corruption survives. He's not just a man anymore. He's a wound in time." Jon looked at him. "And how do we end him?" Bran's eyes closed. "I have to go into him, find the source of the wound, the first memory, and burn it from the inside." "That could kill you," Daenerys said. "It could kill everything if I don't," Bran replied. He leaned back and let go. His eyes rolled white. The forest stilled Dot, and then the cold came. Not wind, not frost, but a terrible emptiness that spread. Like ink in water, the red leaves curled and blackened. The weirwoods groaned. From the center of the isle, near the heart tree, the mist thickened and stepped through it, came the Night King. He walked without sound, his crown of ice casting no reflection in the lake, his sword sheathed. His eyes locked on Bran, and he smiled. Jon stepped forward. The Night King raised one hand. From the roots, the dead rose, not men, not whites, but memories. Shades of ancient kings, first men, children of the forest, twisted by shadow. They surged forward. Jon fought like fury, Longclaw blazing with steel and rage. Arya darted between the dead like a storm, her blades whispering through the air. Daenerys mounted Dragon, screaming, Dracarys, as fire poured across the corrupted forest. But the Night King did not burn. He walked through the fire, cold steam rising from his skin. He reached Bran, knelt down, and placed a hand on his chest. Bran was already gone. Inside the Night King's mind, Bran flew through an abyss of black ice, visions flickering like broken glass children sacrificed to trees. The first White Walker forged in pain, the long night, the fall of kingdoms, and behind it all, a cry, a child's cry, a single moment. The origin. Bran dove toward it. And he reached it. A pale boy, stabbed with dragonglass by trembling hands of the children. His scream echoed across time. This was the wound. This was the scar. Bran reached forward, became fire, and touched it. Outside, the Night King's smile faded. He staggered back. For the first time in eternity, Afraid. His hand burned where it touched Bran. Flames licked up his arm. He looked down and saw the past unraveling in reverse. The dead around him froze. Then, cracked, then shattered. The mist broke. The weirwood straightened. The frost lifted. Jon looked up and saw the Night King screamed silently as fire burst from his eyes. He exploded into light and ash. and Bran gasped, collapsing against the roots of the tree. It was done, but not without cost. Silence fell across the Isle of Faces. Not the kind birthed by dread or death, but something deeper, final, cleansing. The kind of silence that follows the passing of a storm, so ancient and fierce. The trees themselves seemed changed by it. John knelt by Bran's body, shaking his shoulder gently. "Bran?" he whispered. For a moment there was nothing. Then Bran's eyes fluttered open, dull, unfocused, like he had returned from somewhere far beyond the world. "He's gone," he murmured. "Not just dead, undone." Arya emerged from the shadows, her blades dripping frost, not blood. "Is it over?" Bran turned his head slowly. "The wound is closed. Time is whole again." Jon sheathed Longclaw and looked around the forest. The weirwoods had stopped bleeding. The black veins that had threaded through the bark now crumbled to ash. A faint warmth had returned to the soil beneath their feet. The roots, ancient and wide, seemed to sigh with relief. Drogon circled once overhead and landed near Daenerys. His wings folded carefully around her as she dismounted and approached Bran. "You burned it out of him." "I burned it out of us," Bran corrected. "He wasn't just the enemy. He was a scar across history. Every war, every whisper of fear, some of it was his shadow." Sansa arrived with a dozen men from the river, their faces awed and disoriented. "We saw the dead fall," she reported. "They just dropped. All of them, north and south." She looked at Bran with narrowed eyes. "What did you do?" Bran looked at her for a long time. "I reminded the world who it was." By that evening, ravens flew in every direction carrying news no one could quite believe. The long night was over, though it had never fully come. The Night King was gone, erased from the weave of time. Some of the memories of his horrors would remain, especially in the north, but the fear he inspired, the shadow that lingered in songs and stories, it was already fading. Like mist beneath morning sun. At Winterfell, the weirwood no longer whispered of dread. Its face had softened, the bark clean, as if reborn. The crypts were resealed. The dead had returned to silence. Bran did not. Though alive, he was changed. He could still see past and present, but no longer heard the echo of the night. King in the space between moments. He was whole again, but distant, like the tree he had saved. Arya stood with him at the edge of the battlements a few days later. "You scared me," she said. "I scared myself," he replied softly. "What did you see?" Bran stared north. The first man to draw a blade in anger, the first betrayal, the first mercy. The Night King wasn't born from evil. He was made from fear, but fear spreads if we feed it. That's why he almost won. Arya looked down at the soldiers rebuilding the walls. And now we have a choice. Jon and Daenerys stood together near the gate, watching the sunrise for the first time in days without dread in their hearts. Drogon stretched his wings lazily, curling around the wall like a sleeping god. "What happens now?" Daenerys asked him. Jon didn't answer right away. He looked at the horizon. "Now we remember. We tell the truth. Not just the battles, but what they cost, who we almost became." She smiled faintly. "That sounds like something a king would say." Jon shook his head. "No, just a man who's seen what forgetting can do. Winterfell was not whole, but it was healing. So was Westeros. And deep beneath the Isle of Faces, among the roots of the oldest trees in the world, a small spark of light remained. Not fire, not ice. Memory. Untouched. But now watch. The war was over. And the story, once twisted by fear, began again, written not by the dead, but by the living.